So to round out this slew of Dragon Age reviews I've been on, I'll be looking at the very first, and so far only, Dragon Age feature-length film, Dragon Age: Dawn of the Seeker. Dawn of the Seeker was co-produced by BioWare, its parent company Electronic Arts, and Funimation Entertainment, a company that is most known for creating English translations for and distributing Japanese animated shows. In fact, Funimation was the leading distributor of Japanese animation in North America at the time. The actual production studio was a Japanese studio called Oxybot, and it was distributed in Japan by TO Entertainment Incorporated, where it was released under the title Dragon Age: Crusade of the Blood Mage. Apparently, it was actually Funimation that first expressed interest in making a film based on Dragon Age, and approached BioWare EA. Some members of the lead developers were familiar with Oxybot's previous work, Vexel, and were intrigued by the idea of a collaboration. Generally, I assume BioWare was just eager to expand the franchise in ways that few game franchises get the chance to. Given Funimation's involvement, it might not be surprising then that a Japanese director, Fumihiko Sori, was tapped to direct, though the script was written by screenwriter Jeffrey Scott, who has a slew of TV screenwriting credits to his name from the 1970s to 2019. Notably, BioWare's creative team was somewhat minimally involved in the actual development of the film, as far as I can tell. I imagine the idea of using the film to explore Cassandra's backstory after her introduction in Dragon Age 2 probably came from them, but in interviews they indicated that BioWare was actually pretty hands-off, aside from offering some guidelines about what could or could not be done in the setting. They wanted the Japanese team to have a pretty free hand. Maybe they should have been more involved, is my feeling after watching this movie. Like the other Dragon Age media I've been covering, this movie does not have the best reputation among the fanbase. The characters are generally flat, the plot isn't terribly interesting, the visuals are largely unremarkable at best, and its adherence to the established lore can be shaky. This movie was released in 2012. It actually had a brief theatrical release in Japan, and I'm going to assume most people watching this review are not actually going to seek out and watch it, so I will be describing the plot and offering my thoughts as I go through it. I will offer some upfront commentary on the visuals, which are mixed. There are a few scenes that actually look pretty good, but most of them suffer from this style of using 3D animation where the models and the backgrounds don't always blend very well. I actually think the models mostly look alright, and the character designs are all in line with the lore, but the backdrops are very bland and often very hazy. There's also a heavy vignette put over some scenes. The impression it all leaves is that everything feels a little blurry. Facial animations are also rather stiff a lot of the time. I also still hate this interpretation of the Grand Cathedral because I find it very boring, but it's the only one we have at the moment. It's supposed to have big towers, that's what the Towers Age is named after. The animation can also be kind of floaty and awkward at times. I will also comment a bit on the performances. For the most part, the voice acting is decent, but never outstanding. Colleen Clickenbeard voices Cassandra, rather than Miranda Raison from the games, and I think she actually pulls off Cassandra's accent pretty well, while also sounding a bit younger since the character is about 20 years younger than she was when we met her in the games. Otherwise, the voices are alright, but not something to write home about. Our story begins with an animated intro providing some background on the setting, complete with the obligatory quotation from the Chant of Light about the proscribed role of magic, the chant being the chief religious text of Theda's major religious institution. The chantry is controlled by the Divine, who controls the Templar and Seeker militant orders. Through them, the chantry seeks to regulate and control the mages of Thedas. If you want to learn more about that, I have a relevant lore video. I actually like the opening animation as a tool and the style of the art. It quickly covers the idea of rising tensions in the circles and corruption among the Templars, introducing the Seekers as a force that seeks to purge corruption wherever it may be found, and the idea of blood mages as particularly threatening rogue mages. It's all reasonably lore accurate. It also introduces a new concept called the 10-Year Gathering, a once-a-decade pilgrimage to Val Royeaux attended by all the Grand Clerics of the Chantry and many believers. Our plot kicks off with a raid and a ritual, as a group of blood mages conduct a ceremony around a high dragon they've managed to chain up. The leader, named Frennick, gets blood from the dragon by stabbing it and using his staff like a syringe. That looks weird. Anyway, he talks about a new era for mages and forces an elven girl named Avexis to drink the blood. Then the Seekers arrive, and we're introduced to Cassandra. Yes, the same from Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, though as this movie takes place some 20 years before Inquisition, she's much younger. She's also accompanied by her mentor, Byron. He is the first of the movie original characters to be introduced, and like most of them, he's pretty flat. He's practically the archetype of a seasoned mentor character, telling Cassandra to not let her fury get the better of her. I'm being a little unfair, there is actually a little more to him, but we'll get to that. A fight follows as the Seekers crash the ritual, and I actually think the action in this movie is mixed for me. Sometimes it's a bit clunky, but at other times it's pretty dynamic and suitably intense. Dragon Age has always had a bit of a stylistic thing for over-the-top blood splatter, and yeah, they do that here. The cultists try to set the dragon on them, but Cassandra takes care of that. The mage somehow recognizes that Cassandra is from one of the, quote, dragon hunting clans, and concludes that he is outmatched. While Cassandra's family, the Pentaghasts, are known as dragon hunters, I don't see how that would tip the balance here. It's kind of an awkwardly shoehorned reference. In any case, he transforms into a bird and flies away, leaving the girl Avexis behind. Back at the Grand Cathedral, there's a debriefing with the Divine. This is Divine Beatrix III, the predecessor to the Divine from Dragon Age Inquisition. A character called the High Seeker is in attendance, which was the cause of some confusion back in the day, since all other media referring to the leader of the Seekers uses the title Lord Seeker. The World of Thedas Volume 2 retcons this character's title and name as Lord Seeker Aldrin, though his name isn't actually mentioned in the film. I'm just going to use Lord Seeker for this video. We learn that Avexis, the elven girl, was not with the blood mages by choice, having been kidnapped from the Circle of Magi a few weeks ago. The Lord Seeker determines to keep Avexis in their custody until they figure out what this was all about. Cassandra also gets praised for killing a drake, and we get another Pentaghast dragon hunter acknowledgement. Knight Commander Martel, also a character whose name was not given in the movie, complains about Seekers not sharing information and is swiftly put down by the Lord Seeker.
There are times when stealth and discretion are more valuable than numbers.
Are you implying you don't trust us to act with discretion?
Ensuring that you do is one of our duties. Or have you forgotten, Knight Commander?
Gentlemen, remember where you are.
Back at the Seeker's fortress, Byron and Cassandra spar. He wins, which leads into a speech about Cassandra's prejudices blinding her, and how she needs to see with the eyes of her heart instead of just her head. That's a rather generic message that doesn't really apply to the sparring match they just had, but okay. The point he's really making is that not everything is what it appears on the surface. Cassandra also says she views Byron as a father. Elsewhere, Frennick reports on the situation to a mysterious figure that they can still proceed as planned as long as they get Avexis back. as well as giving them some sort of elven communication stone so that they can remain in contact. Later that night, Cassandra wakes from a nightmare about her brother's death to find Byron knocking out guards and taking a Vexus. Cassandra is understandably baffled by this behavior and ends up going with him on what he claims is an important mission, despite him ordering her away. He leads them into the woods, where Byron explains that he's been investigating a conspiracy. That's how he found out about the Blood Mage ritual they interrupted, and he fears it goes all the way to the Chantry. He hasn't even told the Lord Seeker. That the Lord Seeker hasn't returned a Vexus to the Circle aroused his suspicions. Further, he explains that a Vexus has the ability to control wild beasts, and she is somehow integral to this conspiracy. He isn't sure who to trust amongst the Chantry or the Seekers, so he's taking a Vexus to someone he can trust. Before he can say who, they are attacked by blood mages. Apparently Frennick has been teaching shapeshifting to his followers en masse. Byron says they can't fight and protect a Vexus, but Cassandra rushes forward anyway. What follows is a fight scene where Cassandra slaughters a group of blood mages that exclusively fight using their staves as melee weapons. That's not very creative. I know Seekers can suppress magic, but I don't think she could do that to so many, and there's no indication she's doing anything like that. I don't think the Seekers were shown doing that in the attack earlier either. Once again, the Templar-Seeker anti-magic powers are a sticking point third-party writers don't seem to understand, or in this case, avoid portraying. Byron is stabbed through the chest, taking a blow for Cassandra. Frennick takes a Vexus and escapes into the woods before Seeker reinforcements show up. With his last breath, Byron tells Cassandra to go after them, and that hate can only breed more hate. As she grieves, Cassandra sees another hooded figure and chases them. This is Regalion, not a blood mage, but a circle mage that has been working with Byron. He's the source of the intelligence on the blood mage gatherings. Cassandra almost skewers him for being a mage alone. When the Seekers catch up, both of them are clapped in irons, seeing as Cassandra can't answer why she and Byron took a Vexus. They suspect her and Byron of working with the blood mages. Regalion convinces Cassandra that he isn't a blood mage, but he can find them and a Vexus, so she beats up the other Seekers and takes off into the forest, dragging Regalion behind her by their chains. They could probably have found the keys on those Seekers she just knocked out, but whatever. Meet cute shenanigans ensue.
Get off of me!
Prefer the top, do you?
Shut up!
And Cassandra makes clear she's not here to make friends. Back in the capital, the Lord Seeker is being made to answer for Byron and Cassandra's actions. He defends them, but ultimately the Templars are dispatched to hunt down Cassandra and the mages. Okay, back to Regalion and Cassandra. Can you see why my main impression of this movie visually is just sort of a dark blur? Anyway, he has led her to a circle safe house. Seeing that the horses outside are uneasy, they suspect something is wrong. The mages inside have been slaughtered. A survivor blames blood mages before expiring. They decide to go directly to Regalion's information source on the blood mages, an information trader called Lazaro. On the way, Regalion explains that many circle mages do not oppose the Chantry, but do wish to be treated with dignity and respect, and strive to keep tabs on rogue elements that might undermine that. Hence the development of this intelligence network to monitor groups like Frennick's blood mages and pass the information to trusted people like Byron. After all, even if mages took power, it wouldn't be in anyone's best interest if they were a bunch of crazy blood mages. That's fair and reasonable. There are some additional scenes of the Seekers and mages coming up empty, searching for the pair. It's emphasized that Seekers, Templars, and mages all don't really trust one another. This is the sort of politicking and conspiring that I like. It makes for nice drama, though it doesn't really amount to that much in the end. Anyway, Cassandra and Regalian arrive at Lazaro's place. They confront him. He's an elf, as it turns out, and Cassandra threatens to cut off his ears. That gets the desired response as he name-drops Frennick and reveals that the Blood Mages will use a Vexus to attack the 10-year gathering. The Blood Mages had gotten to Lazaro first though, and he was to alert them if Cassandra and Regalian showed up. Then, an ogre bursts through the floor and kills Lazaro. I'm not really sure how an ogre could have gotten there. His house is built on a cliff, but hang on a moment because it's about to get stranger. The house collapses off of the cliff. Somehow, Regalian and Cassandra are fine, but they look up to see an army of golems and ogres. Okay, so the Blood Mages finding a bunch of control rods and getting some golems is unlikely, but not outside the realm of possibility. Those things are rare, but it's possible. Them using blood magic to control ogres is less so. I'm not aware of any lore that strictly says blood magic can't be used to control Darkspawn. I brought up this same uncertainty when I reviewed the first Dragon Age comic. Darkspawn already carry a magic compulsion in their blood, which will corrupt and poison anyone who gets exposed to it with the blight. There are examples of blood magic being used to influence blight-infected beasts. I'm skeptical they could rustle up an army of ogres like this. Furthermore, even the golem's eyes are glowing red as if they were under the same type of compulsion, which Regalian notes.
The eyes, their minds are being controlled.
It's very weird, I'll just leave it at that. So Cassandra tries to solo 20 golems and ogres while dual-wielding swords. It's very ridiculous, but kind of fun, and it goes as well as you might expect, though Regalian saves her. They escape with basically a magic flashbang grenade they took from Lazaro, only to be immediately confronted by the Templars. They escape by jumping off a cliff into a river. It actually seems like Cassandra used Regalian to break her fall. The middle of this movie honestly feels like a bunch of events sort of strung together without much character, to be honest. Though Cassandra does get some growth when she apologizes to Regalian for mistreating him so far. They set up in a cave and Regalian treats her wounds by rubbing her inner thigh with a leaf. That doesn't seem like it should be necessary for the healing spell to work. They have a bit of a heart-to-heart. Cassandra opens up about her brother and the reason she has so much rage towards mages. Blood mages wanted dragon blood for their rituals, and so came to the Pentagast dragon hunters. Cassandra's brother Anthony was one of the best dragon hunters of their family. When they refused, the blood mages started slaughtering people. Anthony was cut down right in front of Cassandra. Later, the Templars track them to the cave, finding it apparently empty. The Knight Commander sends his men on ahead and then takes out that elf stone Frennick was seen giving his conspirator earlier. He reports that Cassandra and Regalian have moved on to Frennick, before Cassandra knocks it from his hand. Apparently, they were using magic to hide. The Knight Commander batting away Regalian's spell here might be the closest thing to Templar abilities in this movie. He gets the upper hand by repeatedly kicking Cassandra in her wounded leg, and Regalian collapses the ceiling to escape. They take the Elven Stone as proof. Elsewhere, Frennick has finished what he was doing to Avexis and has her use her powers to command dragons. Cassandra and Regalian enter the Seeker Fortress through a secret passage to the Lord Seeker's office. Well, sneak might not be the right word.
I rather liked that cabinet.
The Lord Seeker calmly asks for her report, revealing that he apparently never suspected her of treachery and assumed her and Byron had their reasons for secrecy. He believes their story and decides to take the Elven Stone to the Chantry as proof. He bids them rest and let him handle it. He scarcely takes 2 steps out of the room before he stumbles back, clutching a sword through his chest. The Knight Commander frames Cassandra for the deed, and they are taken into custody. The next scene reveals that the Knight Commander is working with one of the Grand Clerics, and they seem to have a rather close relationship. The ultimate goal of their plan seems to be to install her as the new Divine. This character's given name isn't actually spoken in the movie, but the official website names her Callista. She goes on to comfort the Divine as the 10-year gathering commences. Regalian and Cassandra languish in the dungeons, blaming themselves. Knight Commander Martel visits to blatantly monologue and explain their evil plan. This is a trope that I admittedly think is kind of fun if your villain is supposed to be hammy on over the top, but this is not great writing. He explains that the blood magic ritual that Frennick has now had the chance to complete was intended to give him complete control over Avexis and her abilities. They will use her to control dragons and attack the 10-year gathering, targeting the Divine and all likely successors, leaving the Grand Cleric as the obvious new Divine. That part Regalian pieces together on his own, and the Knight Commander doesn't reveal which Grand Cleric he is aligned with, so that's smart at least. As they are to be executed, the gathering begins with Frennick and Avexis in place for the attack. The execution is interrupted by Circle Mages, who leap up from the rooftop like enemies from Dragon Age 2. Then they proceed to charge the Templars and beat them with their staves in melee combat. It's actually pretty funny. The mages had received messages from Regalian earlier and investigated the Knight Commander, confirming that he is conspiring with the Grand Cleric of Orlais. There are some magical fireworks, so the mages haven't completely forgotten how to use magic, and Cassandra takes on Knight Commander Martel. In ranting about bringing a new age to the Chantry, he talks about preventing incidents like the rebellion in Kirkwall from happening again. This was a bit confusing to a lot of people because the Circle Rebellion in Kirkwall happened at the end of Dragon Age 2, many years after this movie is set, but this is actually referring to events 2 years before this, when the Viscount of Kirkwall attacked and was then deposed by the Templars. I've mentioned it in my Chantry and Kirkwall videos. Anyway, she cuts his damn arm off and blood gushes everywhere. Honestly, I had kind of forgotten how bloody this franchise is sometimes, so this really caught me off guard. She stopped short of killing him, quoting Byron's words earlier that hate can only breed hate. He will answer for his crimes, but she won't kill him in anger, thus displaying her character growth. So of course, he breaks free and charges her so she can kill him in self-defense. You know, ethically. This is called having your cake and eating it too, or a choice completely lacking in personal sacrifice. I'm not a fan of this. The message of personal growth isn't completely undermined, but it is partially when she's able to get her revenge almost immediately after refusing it. At any rate, they rush off to the Grand Cathedral for the gathering. The Divine speech is interrupted by dragons flying overhead. Panic ensues as Frennick eggs them on. Several Grand Clerics are killed, while Callista proclaims that the Maker sent dragons to punish them before hiding herself away. The Divine is trapped and nearly killed. Arriving on the scene, Regalian heads off to find Frennick, while Cassandra immediately throws herself off a ledge to tackle a dragon. Okay, I will say that I actually enjoy the action in the climax of this movie, even though it is ridiculous. For example, Cassandra uses a knife to seemingly cut a tendon or muscle at the base of the neck that interferes with its ability to use its wing, which crashes it. That's a pretty cool use of Cassandra's Pentagast Dragon Hunter credentials. Then she jumps right onto another one. Frennick has Avexis call in a high dragon to go after the Divine, but Regalian and Cassandra interfere. Cassandra flawlessly times wounding the dragon she's on so that it will crash into the High Dragon before it can reach the Divine. Frennick is cornered by the Circle Mages and Cassandra. Grand Cleric Callista tries to get close to Frennick, but he betrays and kills her. He used her ambitions for his own benefit, but his true goal was nothing less than the destruction of the Chantry and the freedom of mages. The Circle Mages reject his appeals, and Frennick says he'll destroy them as well. He does that thing Blood Mages in Dragon Age 2 did and impales himself on his staff. He evidently summons a pride demon and is possessed, transforming on the spot. Visually, the pride demon is actually one of the better looking things in this movie. It's suitably powerful too. The Circle Mages can barely touch it, and Cassandra just gets batted away no matter what stunt she pulls. Regalion wakes up Avexis, however, and asks for her help. Thus we get the fight every Dragon Age fan has thought of at least once: High Dragon versus Pride Demon. In this case, the Pride Demon wins after forcing the High Dragon's own fire down its throat, though it's badly damaged. As it attempts to climb back towards our heroes, Cassandra says a prayer and leaps down to deliver the final blow. She gets hailed as the hero of Orlais, and Regalion gets some recognition, but more importantly, a peck on the cheek. Even Avexis shows up for this big ceremony honoring their victory. At this ceremony, the Divine makes Cassandra the right hand of the Divine. In a final scene, the Divine gives Cassandra the book she has in Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, and says she must prepare for a coming storm. This doesn't really make sense in continuity, since that book is supposed to be a writ to re-establish the Inquisition given by the next Divine, not this one, and not until after the events of the Dragon Age Asunder novel some 17 or so years in the future. Maybe the book is multi-purpose, but it definitely doesn't seem to line up that Beatrix III would be coming to Cassandra like this. It's clearly meant to call back to her appearance in Dragon Age 2. Okay, let's put together my final thoughts. This is a very mediocre movie. It's not awful, really, but it's not very memorable either. Most of the characters are very flat and don't have much to them. Frennick is just another evil blood mage, which this franchise has no shortage of, and his design is the only thing that makes him remotely memorable as an antagonist. The other antagonists, like the Knight Commander and the Grand Cleric, which I'll remind you the film doesn't even bother to give proper names, are even less memorable. The same can be said for the rest of the cast aside from Cassandra. Even Regalion is just somewhat charming mage man. Cassandra at least does have a narrative arc where she comes to realize it's bad for her to paint all mages with the same brush, and that she can't just keep lashing out in anger over what happened to her brother. It isn't that strong though, and certainly not enough to carry the movie. It would have been a bit better if her rage had actual major negative consequences that she had to learn from, but that doesn't really happen. She does at least feel like she could be a younger version of the Cassandra we met in the games. The action is a bit mixed. Mages seem to forget they can use magic in large stretches of this, though the choreography is decent enough for the most part. There are a few sequences that shine, especially the last 20 minutes or so that I think are actually pretty fun. I actually think that's probably where a lot of the budget and time was spent. That's where the best visuals are. Like I said before, much of this film is just a very gray, black, and just dark. Now you might wonder if any of this is referenced in the games, and the answer is yes, a little bit. Cassandra will talk about it in Dragon Age Inquisition. She resents how the tale has grown in the telling over the years, and grown to magnify her role while downplaying the help of the Circle Mages. She also dislikes the attention and celebrity it brought her, and is glad that is tampered down over the past 20 years. Any relationship she might have had with Regalion didn't really go anywhere. We also see what is heavily implied to be Avexis in Haven, talking to Mother Giselle. Things have not gone so well for her, as she is now tranquil, her emotions and connection to magic snuffed out. It is implied that she was tormented by the voices of dragons in her head after these events, and may have sought this fate out voluntarily.
Researcher Minave wishes to verify that the infections have decreased in number.
Yes. Thank you for your help. Tell me, are you happy this way? With everything you feel and dream cut away?
I no longer talk to dragons.
I see. Maker, go with you.
Yeah, that's pretty grim. At the end of the day, while I think a lot of Dragon Age fans would get a kick out of that final sequence, I think I could only recommend this whole movie to people that are big fans of Cassandra and want to see her in more stuff. For someone that isn't just trying to consume all Dragon Age media, I couldn't really say this mediocre film is worth seeking out. That's it for now, and the end of my coverage of Dragon Age ancillary media for the immediate future. Like, share, and do those things that help YouTube channels grow if you like. I will have a BioWare Gear Store code down there if you want a discount. I'm going to take a small break for the next month or so to write some more scripts. I will be doing some Cyberpunk coverage since that's what's getting a lot of views at the moment. Until then, I hope you have a nice day and have a happy Halloween.